very warm welcome here at SwissNext. Thank you for being here so numerous. Actually, we're very happy to see so many people. It's actually a very special evening, and you'll discover it throughout the evening. My name is Christian Sim. I'm the founder and the CEO of this place, but of course I don't do anything other than talking in front of people. It's actually my whole team that runs the place, and who knows what SwissNext is? And just no one. That's the best, because that means we can explain it to so many people. So SwissNext, we are active in science and technology, higher education and innovation. So everything between the idea and the product, and between Switzerland and North America. So we try to build bridges, to have exchanges of ideas, to have conversations about important subjects, and hopefully at the end, to have really good corporations. So that's what we try to do. I don't want to be long because you didn't come for us. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So you can read the rest on our website. But the first surprise is that you are very special guests tonight. You are probably the last ones to see this building, or at least to see us in this building, because after 13 years here, we're actually going to move out, and we're going to go to a bigger space on Pier 17, so that's next to the export room. So just, be ready to come and take your safety vest and come and see us there for the next events, which will happen this fall. So that's the first surprise. The second surprise is that, oh, she's running away. That Shasha is supposed to say something. So Shasha is actually the reason why you're all here. And the Hive is the reason why you're all here, because the event is organized by the Hive. And she will tell you what it is.
Thank you, Christian. So yes, hi, and thank you everyone for coming to the Hive Think Tank. And if tweeting tonight, please just go by Hive Data. So the Hive Think Tank is a forum for thought leadership. We focus through our talks and panel discussion on two things, entrepreneurship and all things data. These are just few speakers that were on the stage in the past. Since our inception, we organized over 150 events with 200 speakers on our stage. In our community, we have over 8,000 data innovators. These are data scientists, entrepreneurs, developers, corporate users. And thank you to all of you who were with us in the past, and to all of you who are here with us for the first time. Upcoming event is coming in 2 weeks with a focus on Microsoft Big Data Stack by CTO for Data at Microsoft, and it's taking place in Microsoft campus in Mountain View. So to all of you who want to attend, just go on our meetup page, the Hive Think Tank, and you can register there. These are few events until summer, so you can find them all on our website and on the meetup page, the Hive Think Tank. Without partners and without sponsors, many of our events wouldn't have happened, so we'd like to give a big shout out to all of them. Thank you, SwissNext, for hosting your last event, your premises, so we hope we'll see you in your new building as well. All the Hive Think Tank events are brought to you by the Hive. The Hive is a co-creation studio with focus on all things data, as I said. We cover, we go through across three areas, through three themes. These are IoT, enterprise, and online. What we do, we co-create startup, we fund a startup, and then we launch a startup. In our portfolio, we have 19 companies so far. Once again, if tweeting, Hive Data is a hashtag, and thank you to all of you again, and I would like just to call Christian again on the stage, so just to announce our speaker and surprise for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Shasha, and maybe we give her a big hand of applause, and to the Hive. So I'm not the speaker, but I have a question for you. So if somebody would tell you, stop wishing, start doing, and take command of your life, who would say, I'm not interested? Raise your hand. Well, then, you have the right speaker tonight, because Professor Bernie Roth has actually written a book, and that's the book, main title is The Achievement Habit. And he will talk about that. He's one of the champions of design thinking. He's founder of the d.school at Stanford. He has over 30 years of experience of challenging people to think out of the box or get out of their comfort zone. And he has agreed tonight to share some of his insights with us, so we are very glad. Thank you very much, Bernie, to have come to San Francisco. And without further ado, please welcome Bernie Roth.
So I learned today one of my achievements is the demise of this place. So this is the best talk that's going to be here. So what can I want, right? Anyway, I'm glad to be here. I've known about this place since they founded it, but I've actually never been up here. And so thanks for giving me the opportunity. When I got booked by the fellow from the Hive, he said, we're going to do it somewhere in southern Silicon Valley. So, like that. All right, so what I want to do tonight is talk to you about design thinking as a kind of tool which you've all heard about, you've known about. But I wanted to concentrate on the processes and what we call the mindsets and just give you some of my opinions about those things and show you what I think is really important about them. And a lot of people think of design thinking as I gave a talk at the Commonwealth Club when my book first came out, and some woman asked me, does design thinking mean you have to have post-its and moving boards? Is that design thinking? And the answer is, well, not at all. It's just a tool that some people use. It's a useful tool, but that doesn't define it. So I want to talk to you what defines it in terms of me, show you some examples from the D.school, and then give you some opportunity to have some experiences of the type I talk about in my book. So that's where we're going. So first of all, what is design thinking? Well, so it's an abstract thing, really, and everyone has sort of different versions. This one was created with a good friend of mine, Bill Mogridge, who is one of the people my book is dedicated to, so it's dear to my heart, this definition. But the idea is simply, if you're here and you have to get to the other side of this, it looks terrible, and it may be terrible, and it may take your life away, but you actually know what you want to do. You know where you are, and you know where you want to go. And that's the idea in general with analytic thinking. It harnesses explicit knowledge of logically expressed thoughts. And it's hard. I mean, you know, I've spent my life doing a lot of analytical thinking. I'm not saying it's easy. It's just different, okay? And the point is you can do all sorts of thinking, and the more different things you do, the better off everyone is. So it's not either or. But design thinking harnesses tacit knowledge rather than explicit knowledge of logically expressed thoughts. And this image is, of course, this is what you see, and this is what you don't see. And what you don't see is much bigger than what you see. And part of the idea of doing design thinking is to somehow get your problem so that you're dealing at this part here, and hopefully it gives you a much bigger answer, a better answer than you'd get without doing that. So basically, there's a process when we teach it. We teach a process something like this. We start with understanding the problem. So first of all, what is the problem? What do I understand about it? Go and find as much information as you can. And then, one of the big differences in design thinking is this whole idea of observe. And all of the ideas you'll see in a minute is people-centered. And I'll show you some examples when people didn't use people-centered design. So it seems like a no-brainer. If you're designing something for people, why wouldn't you go see people? In fact, I was trained as a mechanical engineer, and I never went to see people for many, many years. I designed many robots, and I never talked to anyone who would use the robot, okay? That's the way it is in the world in general, or was, hopefully. And the idea is you talk to experts. If you work for a company, you talk to the other experts in the company, you talk to customer engineers, they get the data for you. You don't go and get the data for yourself. So putting it in terms of Hive data thing, it's the whole idea of where do you get the data from and who do you believe. I recently read a book, a really nice book about the Wright brothers. I don't know if you read that book. And when the Wright brothers started, they were bicycle mechanics, really, and they were interested in the aerodynamics of flight. So they went to the professors and they got all the fluid mechanic data. And then they went out to Kitty Hawk and they started doing experiments, and they found all the white data was bullshit. It wasn't, and they built wind tunnels. And they had to create all their own data. So the expert data was meaningless. And these guys were getting big grants for the Smithsonian, and Langley has an airport named after him, and all that. And it was nonsense. It was really nonsense. And it took years for them to generate their own data. So the point simply is, when you, it's not, once you understand the problem, you just begin it, you have to go and observe. And that's one of the main points of what we call human-centered design. And sometimes we use the word empathy. They're not the same, but they're very close ideas. So that's one of the important things that's a little bit different about design thinking. So everyone, of course, has to understand the problem, no matter what kind of thinking you use, or it's worthless. But the whole idea of observing and the whole idea of human-centered, which is in this spot, is sort of new. And then you generate what's called a point of view. Now, a point of view, again, is a more formal thing for us than it is for most people who problem solve. It's the same as a problem statement. And I'll explain more about that. But our problem statement sort of doesn't want to define the conditions. If you don't have a defined point of view, you have implicit constraints that you're not aware of, and they can often get you into trouble. I'll get there later. And then once you know, so all this is knowing what you want to do. And once you know what you want to do, you have to get some ideas. So ideate, brainstorm, whatever it is you use to get ideas. That's not any different, really, although we treat the data in a different way. And then we're very prototype-centered. And again, prototyping is really interesting because most people think of a prototype as something that looks like the thing itself. We use the word prototype in a totally different way. We use it as to do something to give you some data, to do something to give you some information, so that you will be able to go forward. It doesn't have to look like the thing, it doesn't even have to act like the thing. It's just something that, stop talking about it and do something and get some real information. And then you're testing it and so forth. And then there are all these swirls that indicate this is not a linear process, and at any point you can go over and you can observe when you're testing, and you can observe when you're prototyping, and you can understand the problem when you get here. And it's not just a linear kind of stage to go through. So, but to me, the most important thing, not so much the title of the talk is processes and mindsets. And to me, the most important thing are the mindsets, not the processes. Because other than the human-centeredness, the processes are not that different than people use to design anything in any way. But the mindsets are very different. So the first one that's really important is focus on human values. And the whole idea is to, and I'll give you some examples, like I said, where it wasn't done, is to find out what the users are and really get the information. So we have an example where someone is talking to a family and they say, do you use TV to babysit your children? And no, never, never, never. And they get into the house and they get to live in the house for a few days and they see these kids are watching TV 6 hours a day. So the parents, I don't think the parents are lying, they just don't see it that way. So you have to see it with fresh eyes, you have to see it for yourself, and you sometimes, if you do that, you'll get to needs and things that people they themselves don't realize they have, but they do have it. So that's the really important aspect of focusing on human values. Embrace experimentation. Don't be fixed. Try everything you can. It's a way of validating what you're doing, and that's what we call prototyping. So experimentation and prototyping are synonyms in our jargon. Bias towards action. This is really important. Many people sit around and think before they do. And that's good, and especially if you don't want to make any mistakes or stuff like that. We have a course called Launchpad, and the idea of that course is it's 10 weeks long. You come in with a partner, and you're going to start a business. And you do what they tell you, and you will have income by the end of the 10 weeks. If you don't do what they tell you, you leave the class at the end of 5 weeks. It's as simple as that. one of the results is a thing called Pulse LinkedIn, which these two guys sold to LinkedIn for $90 million. And they were in a class, a beautiful example. They had an idea to write an app to read news, a visual app to read news. And it was just when the iPad came out, and we got them an iPad. And these were two kind of shy guys from India. And they had nowhere to sit, so they sat in the cafe. And everyone wanted to try the iPad. So what they done is they got user feedback every hour, and they could change their code a couple of times a day. So by the third week, the faculty said, launch. And they go, no, it's not ready, it's not perfect. It's got to let it launch or get out of the class. So they launched. I cannot tell what happened. Steve Jobs gave them a shout out. The New York Times sued them for making money off New York Times content. The Mercury News wanted to hire them. And they went to the top of the charts in terms of the app. And as I say, ultimately, LinkedIn bought it. You can get it's a free app, LinkedIn Pulse. So it's an example to me of this whole thing of bias towards action and not sitting around thinking. If they had done the same thing in the Stanford Business School, as great as a business school it is, they would probably take 2 or 3 years to perfect it before they launched it. And they would they'd plan out for the next 10 years and all that kind of stuff. And it's a really interesting example how you can do it. So you make mistakes. It's okay. You know, the whole idea is to not have a fear of failure, to learn from your mistakes. And people say that a lot, but it hurts. You know, when I make a mistake, it hurts me. But it's okay. And you got to get over that. So with Stanford students, it's really hard because these are people who've almost never made a mistake in their life, other than coming to Stanford, right? And they've just, they're used to getting A's and A's and A's and A's and A's pluses. And they get depressed if they get a B plus. You know, it's that kind of mentality. So for people like that to be okay with making mistakes takes a lot of doing. But once you do it, it's so liberating. So the idea is you learn by doing something. You don't learn by sitting around and thinking about it. So that's a very important thing with bias towards action. A great example is my book. I had an idea to write a book. I have a sabbatical coming up. And I have friends who write books all around me. So I went and talked to them about what book to write. I had several different ideas in mind and all that. And that went on for about 6 months while I was still doing my job. And this was like a sideline. I'd take them out for a drink and schmooze them up and all that stuff. And at the end of the 6 months, September 1st came, it was my sabbatical started. I got up at 6 in the morning, I put my butt in front of my desktop computer, and I didn't know which of the 3 books I was going to write. And my fingers started, and 4 months later, I had a draft of this book. Okay? Now, I could still be thinking, years later, what book to write. Okay? And that's the same idea of this bias towards action. You just got to commit to doing it. Really, there's a woman who works for us. She read my book, and she's been very supportive all along. And she said, you know, Bernie, I'm getting up at 3 in the morning and I'm writing my own book now. And it's this whole idea. She thought about, she worked at Washington College. She's had a good career, but she never kind of did. Okay, so that's another mindset. And craft clarity is a little bit harder to understand. Basically, the idea is make it out of a, when you do these kind of things, you get a lot of mess, you get a lot of stuff. You get a lot of just hundreds of interviews, a lot of data. Let me put it your way. You get a lot of data, okay? You get a lot of data. And what do you do with all that data? And the whole idea is somehow to simplify it, to get it clear out of the confusion. So you're dealing with this stuff, you're dealing with a lot of confusion, and the whole idea is to get some simple clarity out of it. And when that works, it's kind of amazing. So that's another thing. Show, don't tell. So a lot of people can tell you a story. I want to start a company, I have this idea, and they don't show you anything. And we had one class, I'll talk to you about it a little later on. These students go into all these contests for startups and ideas, and they win an extremely large number of prizes. And the secret, according to the colleague who runs that class, is they walk in with something to show. And everyone else walks in with an idea and a PowerPoint presentation. And the secret is, if you walk in with something physical, you've got something there. And my friends at IDEO, the people there who swear, you never go into a meeting with the client without something to show. Because showing is different than talking about it. And if you have to talk about it, it better be a compelling story. So tell is different. For us, show can be a compelling story, it can be a skit. It doesn't have to be a physical thing, but it can't just be the idea, because that doesn't mean anything. And it's just, so that's what we mean by show, don't tell. And then be mindful of process. So that's really an important thing, to know where you are. So one of the justifications for us teaching that process I showed you on this slide is students, especially when they begin, they have something to guide them. So they know after they've got a point of view, it's time to ideate. Well, they know after they figure out what they want to understand, they better go out and observe. So it guides them, it gives them a start. But it doesn't matter, you don't have to do it that way. And I'll show you later on, I'll tear this up a little bit. But especially in the beginning, it's really a good way to teach people to get them to get some mastery themselves. So be mindful of the process and know what, at least you have something to do. If you don't know how to start, this gives you a way to start. So sometimes people, if you give someone a problem, they're not used to solving problems, they don't know what to do, you know what I mean? And it's really an important thing to have a process, and to be mindful of it, because you can correct it and change it and realize it's useful. And then this is really important, this whole idea of radical collaboration. So I have for years team taught, but before the D.school, I team taught the way we do a relay race. I would go in and do my shtick, and then I'd go away, and some other professor would go in and do her shtick, and then she'd go away, and some other woman would go in and do his shtick, and someone coordinated all that. And we had no idea what the other person did. You know, they tell me roughly, you know. In the D.school, the whole idea is we're all in the room at the same time, and we stay there at the same time. So we'll have a class with 32 students and 5 faculty. So I told the former dean, he's gone now, but I told the former dean of engineering, we've invented the most expensive way to do education. And he said, money isn't everything. And the point simply is, the feeling when you're in a room with colleagues and you're interacting and all that is so different than when you're up in front giving a lecture and all that. And it's just a whole different world, and the students learn that. So we've had classes where we work with PhD students, for example, and they're used to being in a lab, isolated, and the professors are bad-mouthing the other professors and all that kind of stuff, and they're bad-mouthing the other lab. And there, when we're there, the 5 of us in this room, they sort of reformed mechanical engineer, Terry Winograd, a computer science guy, Tina Sillig, and creativity management, and 2 other people who work for IDEO and all that. And they see we really like each other. We don't badmouth each other. We support each other. It makes a big difference in their lives. And the whole point, my thing is one of the things that makes Silicon, you probably have more experience than me, but one of the best things that makes Silicon Valley work is people know each other. And even if it's not the same company, you can still have a drink and talk to each other. So this whole idea of not being alone, and it's not cheating to work with other people, is really important. And you have to get that out of students, because they kind of grew up with, you know, I have to do my own work and I have to do my own thing and I have to get credit for that idea. So basically, radical collaboration for us is how we work, but it's also who we include. And that's an important thing. It's really important to include people you don't usually include. And people, it's a little hard because you don't have the same vocabulary, you don't see the world the same way. So just one example, I teach a class, I'd say the fairest way is to say is I'm an atheist, okay, out of a Jewish tradition, okay? I'm the other Bernie, you know? And I'm teaching with a guy who's a born-again Christian, and another guy who is a Mormon so devout he claims he's a grown man with children, he has never tasted a drop of any alcohol in his life. Okay? So that's as different as you can get on that dimension. Okay? And we do fine. We love each other, we do fine and all that. And we bring different viewpoints. So when Bernie Roth tells the class, nothing has every meaning, you give everything in your life a meaning, chapter 1 of my book. This guy who's a Christian who believes God gives everything its meaning has something to say. Okay. Well, there are students in the room who are atheists, there's students who are agnostics, there are religious students and all that. It's important for them to hear the discussion that goes on, and it's really enlightening for us to have that kind of discussion. But that holds also with products. So this is a personal thing. But that same idea holds with products. So, and my funny story about that is, in the D.school, we make teams from students from all different disciplines. So they come from all over. So we have this one project to redesign an intersection, a traffic intersection. And I had a law student in the class. And he comes up with this design. He's got a place for a police car to hide on the intersection. It totally blew me away. I would hide the cars, not the police car. He had it backwards. But it was so interesting. It's a funny example. But it's an example that means something, because if he wasn't there, nobody would have ever thought of that. And the whole idea of working with people in different disciplines is not that I do my engineering, he does his computer science, but it's that we find something in between. And then that's magic, because we can't find it with these little isolated things. So radical collaboration is that way, and it goes to gender, it goes to race, it goes to everything. We have a class, in the D.school we're lucky. I grew up in engineering, always a big issue about women, there are very few women. When I started, there was one woman in my whole undergraduate 4 years ago, but this many years ago. But now it's about 30% in mechanical engineering or so. And in the D.school, it's half and half. We don't even count, we don't even look. So we have this picture of 40 students in this one class, and I'm really proud of it. It's like, it's got law students, got medical students, got engineering students, got humanities students, got musicians, you can't name it. It's got white and black and purple, every race you can imagine. And if I walk someone by, and they're from somewhere, like, there are no Southeast Islanders here, Bernie. I'm always defective. I can't tell you, I'm so proud of the diversity and all that. So the point simply is that even though it looks incredibly diverse to me, to someone else it looks like I don't have something I should have in there. And that's the point. You'll never be totally diverse. However, you should be aware of that. And if you only have one demographic in the room, you might get into some trouble if you're trying to deal with things from the other demographics and to work with. So these are, to me, the mindsets. And to be frank with you, there are others, and I'll give you some I've added for tonight, especially your own special mindsets. But I would say that the mindsets are, in my life, much more important than the processes. Because the processes are sort of more or less, other than human-centeredness, what you more or less do no matter what you're doing, even though you may not label it that way. But once you add these mindsets to those processes, you treat them in a different way. And once you do that, you have this magic stuff that happens when you do design thinking. So here's 2 additional mindsets I want to say, which is have the courage to fail. I've already talked about that a little bit. And the other is nurture curiosity. And then, of course, I wouldn't put a dot in front of be disruptive, because I wanted to be disruptive. And that's the idea. And I don't mean to be personally disruptive, and I'm not a big believer in all of that disruption. However, when you're ideating and you're trying to figure out, if you just stay in the norm, you're never going to get anywhere you wouldn't have gotten in any other way. So part of the magic of design thinking is to be disruptive and get to the bottom of the iceberg. Get somewhere there where you wouldn't get. You may not end up there, but if you never get that way, you're never going to get off dead center. So the whole idea is okay to be disruptive, not in a way that makes everyone crazy and that doesn't make the teamwork and all that, but in terms of your thinking, in terms of your willingness to throw out crazy stuff, it's an important thing. So these are 3 other things to keep in mind, and then this is my favorite, okay? And it shows a school of fish being led into the mouth of a predator. And the caption on this cartoon, which is off the New Yorker many years ago, says, "Our leader knows best," okay? And what that's about is, to me, this whole idea of the difference between design thinking and what I call business and engineering thinking. So if you're my boss, and you say to me, "Bernie," and we're normal engineering or business guys, and you say to me, "Bernie, could you go do this, let's get that done." I go, "Yes, sir. When do you want it by?" And I go out and I'm a great employee, and you give me good raises and all that sort of stuff. If we're design thinking, and you say to me, "Bernie, can you do that?" I say, "Well, let me look into it. I'll get back to you." And I go away, and I do my observation, I do my empathy, and then I come back to you and say, "You know, I was thinking about it. Maybe if we reframed it in this way, we might have something much better." And if you're an open-minded boss, you say, "That's great, Bernie." Okay, if not, you say you're fired. But still at all, it'll look dangerous. So the point simply is, the whole idea that the boss knows everything and the experts know everything, you just have to get rid of that. It's just not true, okay? It's not true. And it depends, hopefully you don't have to worry about that. But I always like this in terms of what I call design versus business thinking. So basically, the big picture is it's all of this stuff together. It's the processes, whatever you want to, what is this? Oh, it is. It's whatever you want to put there, it doesn't really matter. And to me, it's more to be in this environment. If you're working in that environment is what it's all about. So let's go back and look a little bit at the whole idea of human-centered. And human-centered works with the heart as opposed to brain. So the problem is, years ago, when I started out in engineering school, I took courses in designing for people, but it was anthropomorphic. It was the data, it was that Dreyfus stuff, You see that one? You see the picture of a fish, pictures. But basically, it has to do with the whole idea of how far can you reach, how much do you weigh, and there's of course no one who meets the mean dimensions at all. But we learned in terms of a person being a machine, basically. And that's not what we're talking about here. There's nothing wrong if that stuff works, you should use it. But the whole idea is the heart and really things that people themselves don't know. So you have to test with actual users. It's really important to be with actual users. You have to observe, and you have for inspiration, and you have to define problems with empathy and insight, and involve users in ideation. Now this is a big one, because most people, even if they go out, they don't involve the users in the ideation. It's kind of interesting. So a great story that happened, we were doing a project on pregnancy, and the students went to homes of pregnant women. And they were going along, and I forget exactly what the project that they decided they were going to do, but just toward the end, as they're leaving the house, the husband is opening the door for them, and he says to them, everyone's interested in the wife, but no one is interested in the husband. And that was like magic. That was magic. Because there's a lot you can do for husbands involved whose wives are pregnant. And no one thought of that in that cohort. And they would have never gotten to there. And it turned out to be a great project. It would have never gotten there if they hadn't been in that house and the guy hadn't said that. And they would have never gotten there on their desk in the school, no matter how many hours they did that. Another one, we do some stuff all over the world. So we went to Ethiopia. I don't know if you eat Ethiopian food. There's this big pancake, injera. It's sort of like a big tortilla. Put it in California terms. Mexican terms. It's big tortilla. And it's baked on a big platter. And so the team went to Ethiopia. They took hundreds of pictures, and they were there for 2 weeks, and they still couldn't find the right thing. They came back, and they went down to San Jose, where there's a pretty sizable Ethiopian population, and they were showing their pictures to the locals and all that. And the guy, one of the people saw this big montab, I think it's called, this big pan. He said, "You know that? That's my mother's most precious possession." And that was the key. It turns out those things are made of clay. They stay in the huts with the goats and the children, and they break many times a year. And it takes about 25% of the family's income to replace them. And if you do the resources, nationwide it's gigantic in terms of burning trees and all the data's, you'd love it, okay? So it was a simple fix to fix it so it wouldn't break. They put a metal band around it and pre-stressed it. You could throw it off the roof and it wouldn't break. So, but they would have never found that problem if they hadn't kept looking and doing empathy work. And even going to the country was, they had to somehow stumble on someone and say, so you never know when a gem comes. You can't program those things. And many times you don't get anything. But you will never get it if you don't get off your butt and have a bias towards action and go do the empathy work. So that's important. So how about understand and observe? Well, when I talk about understand and observe, to me, it's find a problem you're interested in working on. And it doesn't have to be a problem, it could be an opportunity. Some of the enlightened gurus I work with, there's no such thing as problems. Everything is an opportunity. And in fact, it's interesting. There's a guy, he's been in my life ever since I've been at Stanford, which was a long time. And when I met him, he had a really interesting story. He had been a swimmer, and he had an accident in the shower, and he had a back surgery. And when he recovered, the surgeon said, "You'll never swim again." And he wanted to go to the Olympics. And he talked to one of my predecessors who was crazy design thinker before that thing existed for years. And he said, the professor said to him, well, if you want to do it, who's going to stop you from doing it? So he actually got someone to take him down to the reservoir in San Jose, train the hell out of him, and he just barely qualified. It was between him and someone else, and he got the spot on the Olympic relay team. He got there. He not only, the team won a gold medal, and he set the world's record. And he came back and he put the medal on the doctor's desk. And he came down to give a talk at Stanford about a month ago. I invited him to, he's been in my life. And he's a serial entrepreneur. I cannot tell you how many, if you know pemmican beef jerky, he's the father of pemmican beef jerky among many, many things. And he said to me, Bernie, in my life, every time I had an obstacle, and every time I was stuck, that's when I made a creative breakthrough. And those obstacles, in retrospect, were what got me. Just like that surgery. If I hadn't had that, I might never have done what I did. And it's a kind of really interesting thing. So people think that people have this saying that, opportunities. And they are. Problems are opportunities. And you have to actually make sure you walk around them. So the way I see it, if you're walking along, there's an obstacle in life. So there's an obstacle. So if you're smart, you look around, you figure a way to walk around the obstacle. It's no big deal. But if you're not smart, you keep banging against the obstacle. You keep banging against the obstacle, thinking somehow you're going to do it. And if you've thought about it 100 times, you're not going to do it again. I read somewhere that we have something like 50 or 60,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are repeated thoughts. so you're not going to think of something new. You got to do something new. Okay. So one is to identify and find a problem or an opportunity you're interested in. Learn everything you can about the need or the problem, and understand the context. That's understanding, and get clear what the problem really is, and what are the ways of doing it is to observe, and then you define what you call a point of view, which is the problem you're going to be working on. And to me, you can do any form you want. The one I like best, it's a phrase describing a specific user. We call it a noun phrase, it's someone's name. And then a verb phrase saying what the need is. And then a phrase giving an insight specifying something you saw in your observations. You observed on it. So a concrete example of that would be this. Jane, that's the noun, a poor single mother, noun phrase, needs financial know-how, that's the verb, so she can use her money efficiently. That's the insight. You're doing the empathy. That's the insight. Now, if you're wrong, you are screwed. It's not going to help you. So the insight implies that is that a poor single mom lacks enough financial know-how to use their money efficiently. If that's not the case, it won't matter. No matter what you educate them, it won't matter at all, okay? So it's really important that the point of view reflect the person's actual needs for solution. This is an actual abstraction of something that happened in one of my classes called Transformative Design, which I actually taught with Bill Marguerite. And we had a student team who had to find their own project, and they went and they found 4 janitors at Stanford who spoke hardly any English, so they had to get it done in Spanish. And they found that these people were being ripped off in every which way. That when they went to cash their paycheck, they were being ripped off. They were being ripped off for their TV, they were ripped off for their cell phones, and they had no knowledge of saving and planning and all that. So they made a little class. This is where this thing came from. They made a little class, they gave a little education, and to their amazement, within 6 months, one of the women saved $1,400. This is on a $40,000 a year salary. She saved $1,400, so they figured there's gold there, there's something there. And that led to a company called Juntos Financi, which is just one of reward a G20. And just someone wrote a book about these things for people that don't get banked. There are billions of people in the world not banked, and they developed a way to use a cell phone, not a smartphone, just the usual, so people could get that stuff and get knowledge and not get ripped off. So it just came out of this empathy of finding a poor single person. It's just this, and one leads to the other, but you have to get out there and do it. So that's an example of point of view. And being mindful process is important in that you have to commit to the need. You don't just do stuff. You have to be consider what you're doing. So question your motivation. Why are you doing it? And why are you doing it? And you can't expect financial or other rewards if there's no need being satisfied. And that's this technology push stuff, you know. Someone has this great idea and they build something and no one cares about it. So you have to really be making sure people are going to care about it. They may not know they do, but they ultimately going to have to want to do that. And my thing is trust your gut, follow wants, not what you should do. And shoulds are a really bad word, I must say. So one of the big differences in design thinking versus analytical thinking is in analytical thinking you start like out there and you focus all the way down. It's sort of a linear kind of thing. In design thinking, it's like you start out, you flare and you focus, and you flare and you focus. So it's this thing of just going in and out, in and out, in and out. So it's sort of a different mentality in general. Because, you know, you're always like going to get the answer, so I can give it to my boss right away by tomorrow in regular thinking. And here you want some wonder to come. And this is what I do to the process, you know, mess it up. I don't care. You don't have to, you know, you can cross out circles, you can put empathy wherever you want, I don't care. Just do it, but be mindful of what you're doing and change it to suit the situation. There's not one thing that's right. You know, in my book I give a list of 21 things that my friend Roth used to develop. But it doesn't matter. You don't need, you know, some guy wrote a book with 105 methods or something like that. What do you do with 105 methods? You just need one method that works for you, or two if you start. So what we call radical collaboration at d.school involves involving, you know, we're at a university, so it involves like the education school, we're sort of the designers, the engineering school, the industry, medicine, business, social science, and so forth. And we try and make ourselves the center of the world in that sense. So people know they can come to us and they let them come. So of course they walk in, they think we can cure cancer and solve the Palestinian problem and all that. But there are things that come in that make sense and are really doable that would never come in because they don't have a home. And I want to talk to you a little bit, give you some examples from a class, which is one of my favorites, called Entrepreneurial Design for Extreme Affordability. Originally, now it's called Design for Extreme Affordability. And there was a movie made of this class and played on the public television channel called Extreme by Design. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it followed a team through a year. And this is an amazing class in that it designs things for people who earn less than $3 a day or $2 a day. And we've been doing it 11 years. There are about 405 students who've gone through it. We have 35 partners out in the world for this project. We've been in 21 countries. We've done about 100 projects, and 33 are in market. Now that's a third. Now that's through startups. That's an amazing, amazing, amazing number. Okay, so I want to show you out of class some kind of examples because they will help me make the points I made to you about design thinking. So one of them is called Delight, like D.school Delight. And it's a for-profit company. It came out very early in our thing. And what they do is they use solar-powered LEDs, basically. And the point is, this team, this class started out, the project that the faculty wanted them to do had to do with going to Myanmar and pumping water with treadle pumps. And these people felt that if you go into the huts where these people are in Myanmar and you see what they're doing, they're using kerosene and you can hardly breathe. Or they're using candles and you can hardly breathe. And it costs them about 30% of their annual income. These are very poor farmers in the Delta. And it's not healthy. So they said, well, water is important if you're a farmer. But this is really healthy for life. So they twisted the faculty's arm and they changed the thing to deal with task lighting with LEDs and inexpensive lights. And here's an example of a village in India they lit up for the first time. The sad part of the story is that people in this village break rocks for a living. They earn 15 cents an hour, and this lets them work 2 more hours. But they did like the village. But the point is, I couldn't come here without giving you some data. I would feel you'd kill me, right? With no data. You'd say I came here under false pretense. So I went to their website and I got big data for the Hive. Are you ready? So the big data is 58 million lives have been empowered because of the stuff they've done. They've saved 4.8 billion energy expenses. 15 million school-aged children have solar lighting. 21 million tons of CO2 offset. There's 112 gigawatt hours generated and 29 billion hours of productive work created. So that's data you can understand. So the point is, this is a little project out of class that just started. Okay? And it's just following what the customers are and looking with the people and realizing that what these farmers in Myanmar needed, in addition to needing water, was this light thing and doing it in a way that was affordable and all that, and then it just spread all over that part of the world. And these things also, you can charge them off the grid. So in places like India where you have a lot of grid, you also have a lot of absence of grid. So you can charge it when the grid is working. This is another project. This is called Embrace. This is a picture of a premature child. And they're very small if they're premature. And the problem is they need heat. If they don't have heat, they die. It's as simple as that. And we were contacted by a NGO that deals with doctors in Nepal. And this is an incubator, which is in the Stanford hospital. It's exactly the same ones they had in Nepal. And the problem, and they got them as gifts from India, so they cost around $20,000. But that wasn't the big issue. The big issue was maintaining them. They kept breaking. And the fact that if there's no electricity, there's no heat, it doesn't work. So the problem the students were given, and this is this whole idea of reframing and getting the right point of view. The problem they were given is make it so that the incubators don't break as much or easy to repair, and do something about keeping them going when the electricity goes out. So being good citizens, while they were at Stanford, they started to work on battery backups, and they redesigned the thing to make less parts, less complicated. And when they got to, so our procedures, we have 10 weeks at Stanford, then there's 3 weeks you go to the country, then you come back and you have 10 more weeks to get the design done. That's the way the class works. So when they went for the 3 weeks, they were blown away because the incubators are in the clinics. The clinics are in the villages. The mothers are in the hills. They can't get there on time. They can't leave the other children to take the new one, so they maybe leave the child dying because they can't abandon the other children. Or they can't get there in time to get the heat. So the problem was the wrong problem. They had to reframe the problem. What they reframed the problem to was this. This is the customer. The customer is not the experts, not the doctors. The customer is the mother and the baby. And the desperate parent in a remote village who cannot access a major hospital needs a means to give their dying baby a chance to survive. That was the problem. Okay. And it's really, now I must tell you, this is the courage part of it. I must tell you, what I'm going to show you looks amazing and simple. It's like the Columbus story of the day. It's going to look simple. But I want to tell you that before they did that step, there was agony with those students. Because they had put in 10 weeks on battery backups, they had been 10 weeks on redesigning, and they had a sure thing. They would satisfy what people asked them for. And the question was, should we abandon all of that, and should we go for something we don't know if it's going to work, but it would solve this other problem? And fortunately, it was a TA who said, go for it, go for it, go for it. She's now our executive director. And they went for it. And what they did is they designed something that looks like a sleeping bag. And essentially, there's a secret to it. There are two secrets to it. But the point is, right now, it's a company's called Embrace. It's a not-for-profit company. And as of about a month ago, they had 300,000 babies they had saved. And every day it's more. And the point simply is, you put the baby in here. And that's not enough to keep the baby warm, of course. It's just like a sleeping bag. So what they did is they have a bladder that fits in. I don't know if I don't have a picture. They have a bladder that fits into it, which they originally made with the margarine. They went to Safeway and bought margarine and melted the margarine and just see how long it could keep the thing in. Then they found there's actually a chemical, like a wax-like chemical, that changes phase. So you can heat that, and it becomes a liquid, and for 4.5 hours, it keeps exactly the temperature you want to keep the baby at. So you can put the bladder in, and you can heat the bladder. If you have electricity, fine, heat it with electricity. But if you don't have electricity, you can boil it. If you can't use the sun, there's a lot of different ways you can heat it. You're not stuck. And they did this, and they felt great, and they went to India, not with this is like a later model. They went to India, and the parents hated it. The parents hated it. It was like, the kid is dead. And what was the version was, it didn't have this window in it. So it looked like the kid was in a shroud, and they wouldn't go near it, because it was like a jinx. When they realized that, which they would have never realized, at Stanford they thought it was great. They felt like heroes. And when they got there, they did some more empathy work. This is the cycle. They cycled back, testing and getting empathy. They found that they had him show some of the baby. And when they did that, it was a winner. It was a winner. And it's going now, as I said, we were over 300 children. And there were later models of this. But that was the idea. But when you see it, it's great, it's great. But you have to realize there was so much courage involved in letting go of the sure thing to go to something that was unknown. And that's just letting go of the fear of failure. It's okay to step back and be afraid. You know, being brave is not being afraid. Being brave is being afraid and doing it anyway. No, really, it's a really important distinction. I learned that when I was 16. I had to walk 4 miles in the dark at 2 in the morning every Saturday. And I was scared witless. And I did it anyway. And I learned that was my learning what brave is. Really. And I just resonate to these things. It's okay to be scared witless and do it. Okay. So that was that. Now this one here is a classic example of reframing. It's just classic. This is the story is that this guy's name is Doug Dietz. There's actually a really good TED Talk on this. His name is Doug Dietz, and he's a senior designer for GE Medical. And his designing, at this one point, he designed MRI machines for children. And he's designed them. She was out for a while and all that. And he's figured, well, let me go down to the clinic, see how it works. I've never been to a clinic, see what they do. And he went down, and the nurse, he said, I designed that machine. They said, fantastic, we love the machine. He felt like 10 feet tall. And then They drag a kid in, screaming and kicking, and the nurse says, "You're going to have to leave now, sir." He says, "Why?" She says, "Well, we have to sedate the child." And what he found out is that 85% of children have to be sedated when they go into the MRI machine. So he felt like a failure. He really felt, he got depressed, really clinically depressed. And somewhere his friend said, "Why don't you go out to Stanford, you go to Sunshine, get the hell out of Schenectady, and go out there and take an exec ed that will keep you busy." So he took one of our exec ed courses, and we pounded empathy, talk to user, and he realized he never talked to any kid. He talked to doctors, he talked to customer engineers, he talked to other medical professionals, and when he went back, he found a group of chronic patients. He found children of chronic patients. He made, that's my thing, Tom. The idea is to go out and talk to people. So he got chronic children that have a lot of medical issues. He brought them in. He went to children's museums. He got child psychologists and all that. And what they did is they didn't touch the machine at all. They just reframed the experience. They made it look like an invention. And they made it look They made it look like an adventure series.
Yeah.
And he would send the children, they made a comic book which showed looking through your body so they could understand what's going on. They gave them a knapsack like going to camp. And what happened is, and this one's like a pirate ship, you got a whole still sort of pirate boat. They made a story with each one of them. And the rate dropped below 1%, from 8.5 to below 1%. And children were heard saying, "Mommy, can we come back to Mommy?" Because instead of going for a medical thing, they were going for an adventure. They made an adventure series out of it. So it's a perfect example. And if you look at, if he looks at this, he cries actually when he tells you the story, because he looks at this now. He has so much empathy. He understands that's just like a child crawling into the mouth of a monster. And adults are afraid. My wife always gets some happy drug to go into it. Woody Allen has a great bit in one of his movies on that kind. I mean, they're kind of horrible machines, but adults kind of tough it out. Well, kids you can see, but if you don't have the empathy, if you don't see it with a kid's eyes, you'll never know it. You'll never know it. You'll blame the kid. Kids being unruly, why aren't you reasonable? It's for your health. But this is the whole idea, to put yourself in the place of the users. So that's a really perfect story about reframing. So question is, how do you reframe a thing? Well, my theory is, and this is kind of what my book is about, partially, if you're stuck, odds are you're treating the wrong answer as a right question. I'll explain that in a minute. You're treating the wrong answer as a right question. Look, you're all very smart people, I know that. I'm pretty smart. He's pretty smart too. No, he doesn't want to tell you that. Okay? Well, how come smart people like us have things we lose sleep over? And I'm not talking about curing cancer. I'm talking about, should you go to the movies tomorrow, or should you tell your brother he's a jerk, or something like that, or tell your neighbor to stop making noise. Little things in life. Why is it we all lose sleep over we can't handle it? My theory is that, in fact, it's because we have the wrong problem. And just like Doug Dietz had the wrong problem, you have the wrong problem. It's not as dramatic, we have the wrong problem. So let me give you an example next year. So let's say your problem that you're losing sleep over is to find the spouse. Okay? And let's say you've done everything. Everybody's fixed you up in the world, you've been on the computer, and the parents are putting a lot of pressure on you, and your kid brother wants to get married, you're in the way. Whatever the drama is, okay? You've done everything, you can't find a spouse. I know a lot of people find spouses. It's not a problem for a lot of people, okay? But in your case, it was a problem, or it is a problem. Okay? So what my theory is, if you're losing sleep over it, and you really want to solve it, it's the wrong problem for you. And ask yourself, how do you find the right problem? You ask yourself, what it would do for you if you solve the problem? So what would it do for you if you solve the problem? So let's say I asked you, and you said it'd be companionship. Okay, so you said, if I get a spouse, I'd have companionship. It's a nice neutral answer. Okay, good. Well, what has happened now, if you now let go of the first problem, and you realize your problem is really to get companionship, the solution space has expanded tremendously. The solution space has gotten tremendous. So there's now lots of ways to get companionship. You can meet friends online, you can take place, you get a pet, you can join a club, you can go to the army, you can go to jail, you can become a homeless person. It's endless. So you don't really have the companionship. You get, now the thing is, even if you've got a spouse, you might not have companionship. One of my wife's biggest problems is I'm out here talking to you, and she doesn't have my companionship, believe it or not, she wants it. So just because she has a spouse, she doesn't have companionship. So if she really wants companionship, she wouldn't have done well to marry me. Because I'm out lecturing and teaching and all that kind of stuff. So it's really interesting to make sure you work on the right problem, okay? And that's a really important thing to understand, and that rephrases. So I want to give you a chance to experience that, because just telling you is nothing in my life. Doing is what counts. This is our show, don't tell. Get it? We're at a show, don't tell moment, folks. That show, don't tell moment, okay? So what I want you to do is think about a problem in your life. I don't want, when I did this thing down at Microsoft, there was some woman from Greece, and she got involved with the Greek economy. I don't want Greek economy, and I don't want peace in the world forever. I want something nitty-gritty that you're really losing sleep over, that you really care about. Now, you're not going to have to tell it to me. It's going to be private. So if you really go for it, take something real in your life, this really works. I guarantee you, folks, it really works. So I want you to, I'm going to be quiet in a minute, and I want you to think of a problem in your life that you really want to be rid of, and that you're stuck on. You've been losing sleep over it for some time, and say what that problem is, and just hold it there. So just for, I'm going to stop now. I just don't do anything with it yet. Just go back, we're going back to this step. I want your equivalent to find a spouse. I want to know, you to know, a problem in your life that you really want to solve or get rid of, that's bothering you, and I'm going to be quiet, and I want you to identify that problem, all right? I'm quiet, you think. And if English isn't your native language, you can do it in whatever language you want. It doesn't matter. This works in every language, all over the world, even in Switzerland. Believe me. Anyone need more time? Raise your hand. Okay, so now what we want to do is go to the next step here, which is, what would it do for you if you solve that problem? So tell me what it would do for you if you solve the problem. Just so what I want you to do is, what would it do for you if that problem was solved? And then the next step is convert that into the problem you want to solve. So convert what it would do for you into the problem you want to solve. Now, if you're honest and you don't lie to yourself, at least a third of you have solved the problem, unless you're a Stanford undergrad. Stanford undergrads do not understand the difference between disappearing a problem, which is a much higher state, and solving a problem. So if they did this and they got a pet and had companionship. Yeah, but I didn't get a spouse, Professor Roth. I know you didn't get a spouse. We disappeared that problem. It's not a problem in your life. So you have to be big enough to let go of the original thing and not hold on to the problem. And realize if this is really what you want, we've handled it. The pet is it. Pet is much better than the spouse, believe me. You're married a long time. So you get the idea. Now really, did anyone have any difficulty doing that exercise? People sometimes have difficulty converting, and I'm here, I'm not going to be much longer, I'm here to assist you with that. And if you do, you get a gift from me, and you get a gift in that you help everyone else to understand this more fully. So anyone have something that they're a little stuck with how you go from the problem to the new problem? I got a pocket full of gifts. Yes, there we go. Live person, yes.
How do you ask yourself the other question?
The other question will now be what you're working on tonight in your head. And you will see that the solutions, you see the solution space is much bigger. It includes your original problem as one answer. But there are 10 or 30 or 100 other answers that you didn't think of because you were banging your head. You were banging your head against the obstacle. You were banging your head against getting a spouse. You can't see me, but I'll do it here. You were banging your head against getting a spouse. And then suddenly you realize, I want companionship. And here's the dog. And here's the dog. Sorry. That's the idea. So, did you want to talk to me about your thing? I'm really useful.
It's to find a spouse.
What's that?
It's to find a spouse. That's great. That's great. So that's great. I love it because I was at. I'm trying to think where it was. I think it was Microsoft. Well, it was either Google or Microsoft, and it was that way. That's where it came from. So it was like she said. The woman there said, "I want to find a good man." That was her thing. And I said, "Well, what would it do for you if you got a good man?" And she said something like companionship. Okay. And then I went further with her. I said, "Well, what would it do for you if you had companionship?" She said, "I'd have a good life." Now, do you understand having a good life does not depend on finding a good man? It's a totally different thing. Okay. And so, if you what would it do for you if you found a good man or a man, a spouse? I don't even care what gender. What would it do for you if you found a spouse? That's the problem I was having, was trying to come up with.
Why you want to find? So
Yeah,
where'd you get
why?
that idea from?
Because everybody else is doing
Yeah,
it.
no. Well, let me tell you, because that happened to me. I was going around the world, and I was teaching in KTH, that's the MIT of Sweden. And it was the time when they changed the law about retirement. So it was, the law changed, and you had an option of either retiring, which you were compelled to do at 65 back then, or not anymore. So I was losing sleep, trying to decide whether I should retire or not, okay? And in the middle of doing my guru stuff during the day, I said, if this stuff really works, I maybe ought to try it on myself. So I went home that night, this is a true story. I went home that night, and I said, what would it do for me if I could decide whether to retire or not? And what came to me was the brilliant insight, I could stop worrying about whether to retire or not. Well, how do you stop worrying about whether to retire or not? You stop worrying about it. And literally, from that day on, I never thought about it again. It just snapped. And it was the same idea societally. That's why you used the word society. Society had put into my head that I had to make this decision. I didn't give a damn about that decision. But I thought I had, but no one cared. And it may well be that nobody cares if you get married or not, or get a spouse or not. If you care, then what do you want it for? And if it's just because people think you should do that, then maybe you want to satisfy people. I had a woman who one of the things, her thing was how to get her daughter into a good college. She was losing sleep on how to get her daughter into a good college. And what would it do for you if you got your daughter into a good college, playing the game? I could stop worrying. can stop feeling anxiety. So it's clear her issue is how to stop feeling anxiety. Because if she got a daughter into a good college, she'll be anxious about something else. The daughter's going to be with the wrong guy or the wrong dog or whatever. You know, it's endless. It's endless. If you have anxiety about your daughter getting into a good college, it's not going to end it. The problem is how do you end your anxiety? It's really that. And it's as simple as that. But people are like what I call the Stanford undergrads. They won't let go of the original problem. And believe me, you're smart enough to solve it. You are smart enough and you're pretty enough to find a spouse and all that. It's all that. It's no problem. But if it's not working for you, it's the wrong answer to the problem. I'll go back to that slide. That's what's going on with you, and you're going to get the reward. Be nice. So basically,
excuse me. So basically, this is a journey to basically reframe the problem. But in the end,
why don't you speak succinctly? They were the recording.
it's a way to reframe the problem and change the perspective you have on that problem.
Yes.
But in the end, let's say the way you frame the initial question, it may be because this is the preferred option.
Well, you think, you say the problem...
So somewhere,
Yeah, I'll get there.
in my perception is, if I take my personal case, it's there's something I really want to do. I know why. And if I go back to the why thing, there's other options, but this one is the preferred one.
Very mindful. So tell me what your thing is. I'll show you. Abstraction isn't going to get anywhere. So
No, it's
no, but we can't have an abstract conversation. I'm a concrete guy. I'm a design thinker. I'm not an analytical. So tell me specifically what it is. I'll show you where your thinking is.
it's not necessarily so. In my case, what I took as example is a professional goal,
Yes.
and there's something I want.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
And I know I want that because this is something I'd like to do because it's exciting. There's
Yes.
other options
Yes.
to
How come it's not happening for you? Because it's something you want to do, it's exciting and all that. How come it's not happening? How come you're losing sleep over it?
So I won't go that far, but it's
Well, but I
It
asked
takes
you
time.
to give me something you lose sleep over.
Yeah.
So if you won't go that far, you're not playing my game, so we don't have anything to talk about. I'm telling you, so that's the problem. You can't get into abstractions with this stuff because you'll drive yourself crazy, and I don't want you to drive me crazy. So the point is that if it's really something you're losing sleep over, and you really want to get it solved, believe me, that the chances are 99.9999% of the time, it's because you're working on the wrong problem. And you picked a solution. You think it's a question, but it's an answer to something. And if you see what it's the answer to, you'll get a good answer to the same thing, and this is a bad answer. Or you get, it's not hard to get a spouse. If you can't get a spouse, there's something more going on that you ought to look at. And it's whatever it is, I don't know your situation. But I've been through this hundreds of times around the world with various people. It works, believe me, it works. The only thing is you have to not lie to yourself. You have to stop lying to yourself because we all lie to ourselves because we protect our self-image. So people usually don't want to get married for companionship, but they say that. There are other reasons, The best one I ever had is, no one in Stanford has ever said for sex. Nobody, no. So I'm in Myanmar, and I got this room full of 800 yuppies, and they're going to change the country and all that. And I'm doing my shtick, and I go, why would you want to get married? And one of them goes, for sex. And that was like a gift. Because it cracked up the crowd, they loosened up, and we could see that, we would talk about that. We don't have time to do that now. But the point is, it's simply interesting. Okay, so this is the end of the form. Now we have Q&A, right? We have 15 minutes of Q&A. So if you have a question.
Yes.
Okay, sir.
So a lot of your counsel, this Nirvana best practices of small work groups. Could you provide some insight on getting over incumbent majorities and especially incumbent majorities that are not cross-practice and not cross-function, but speak the same language when other languages might be required.
It's a little abstract for me. Let me rephrase it and tell me in my terms.
I'll give you a better one.
All right.
Semiconductor companies in Silicon Valley are composed of semiconductor design practitioners.
Yes.
And they don't necessarily communicate or speak in other cross-practice languages, and they make the rules and have the goal. How do you instate change management in that
No,
environment?
that's a fact, right? If that's true, it's a fact. Now, what's the question? You just gave me a fact, I believe you. It's a fact. I'm not going to argue with you. It sounds like it's, I don't have that experience, but I believe you. If you have that experience, it's fine. What's the question?
The question is, how do you incite change management in an organization that is stuck in their position?
That's a good question, okay? You do it by, I'll tell you that people have done it. So people have done it in lots of companies around. I didn't make it up. They're big companies, Procter & Gamble, there are companies like SAP, IBM is now, you know, all these companies are buying up design companies. The finance companies like Deloitte, they're buying design companies. Can you believe that? It's incredible. And the story is amazing. One of these stories is, someone was there at one of these mergers, and the design guys want to show they fit, so they're in the suits. And the finance guys want to show they're cool, so they're in the jeans. So you have this role reversal to show in this merger. At any rate, it's usually done by, you know, it depends on the management and all that, but usually the idea is you do it by showing. You don't do it by lecturing, you don't convert people with all that stuff. You do it by some success, some small success. So I had a company, a bunch of guys came in, took one of our executives, and I do a thing about trying to do stuff versus doing stuff. And they went back and they had this idea, and they went to the manager, and the manager said, I'm sorry, I don't have any room for you to do it. And I have a thing where you take the cup away from me and you show you can succeed. And they go, let's take the cup away from Bernie. And they set up an office in the hallway, in the space. The manager said, you can't do it. They set up the hallway, and ultimately they got a space, and they did what they wanted to do. They did it by just doing it, basically. Now, I don't know your circumstances, and we can't in 5 minutes solve your whole world, but I'm trying to tell you, the whole idea, this is by doing, not talking about. And yours is too global, it's like curing cancer and all that. You're not going to cure cancer, you can make a change. You can cut off a cancerous little piece. And in an organization, if you really got to do it, you got to have fear, you got to have fearless, you got to do it, and you got to not be a pain in the ass and make everyone wrong. You got to be someone that they want to be like. That's what happened to Procter & Gamble. They set up a little skunk work, and they did some basic stuff, and suddenly everyone wanted to have a skunk work. There's guys who for years were stuck in these suits and the thing. So it's by example in general. That's what's worked so far.
Thank you. Show them.
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah, please.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. I have a two-part question. So I had a chance.
Wait, I forgot to reward you. Sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, thank you very much.
I had a chance to join a prototype team with IDEO. I didn't make the final cut, and it's just something. I've never loved anything more in my life, more exciting. Like this was the one thing. And now my job has gotten a lot harder in terms of how to get to that. And I think when you say just launch, I would feel less fear of failure if you could explain how to have radical collaboration with a potential customer when they're very conservative companies. So how do you do that?
Well, there are different ways. You know, people say these keywords and stuff comes to me that I've long forgotten. And the funny story is when IDEO started out, they were a bunch of students. It was pre-IDEO, had a different name, but it's the same company. And they were a bunch of students, and they were just engineers. And if a customer would come in, they had one person, they called him the suit. And he would meet with the client in a little glass room, so you had to see how funky the rest of the company was. So it's that kind of thing, you know, it depends on the environment and what's appropriate. There's no one right answer. And it's just a matter of doing it. And you don't have fear. The story, I have a story that's an amazing story to me. Some guy was interviewing me to be on the board of his company, and I didn't like what he was talking about. and there was a lot of money involved, and I screwed up my courage, and I said no, knowing that that would end the deal. And it turned out when I said no, he became holier than me. And he said I completely understood him, and he gave me enough reasons that I could say yes, and it turned out to be the biggest single financial thing in my life. So, you know, you never know how this stuff works out, so you don't know how other people are going to think. I was so sure he would say, so long, nice talking to you. Okay. So it's a matter of doing it, and it doesn't always work out. It's so what, you know? I got news for you. Let's say you turn your company around and all that. What's going to happen next in your life?
If I turn it around,
Yeah, it becomes everything you want. Then what happens?
I would feel as though I had finally found the one thing that makes me truly passionate,
Great.
excited.
That's great. Then what happens later on in your life?
It would just spread out,
Yeah,
spread out
then
to
what
the
happens?
rest of
Keep
the
going.
world.
10 years later.
10 years, I would be shooting back to the world and
20
doing what you're doing now.
20 years later.
20 years later.
Yeah.
I'd be
I wanna get
reflecting
to
back
the-
and writing a book.
50 years later. Die already.
I'm dying.
Now, let's say it doesn't happen. It's drags in the company, nothing, you can't get anything to do. What happens next?
I'd be devastated.
You'd be devastated. Then what happens?
I would find another way to do something else
And
that
then
would
what happens?
excite
Then what
me.
happens?
I die.
I said, if we did it fast enough, you get two of these. You take yourselves too seriously, folks. Really, seriously. You know, you're going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I'll figure it out. The point simply is that's the way it is. It's you know, you have it. So just do what you do. And don't take it so seriously. You just test it out and see what happens. And if this happens, you'll do that. You know, if she finds a spouse, she'll get married. She doesn't find a spouse, she won't get married. She got a dog. Dog doesn't work, she got a cat. Cat doesn't work, get a mouse. Just, you know, it's always, you know, it's bias towards action. Just keep moving. And the moving itself is what gives you the life force. It isn't a good thing. I work at one of the best places in the world, and there are a bunch of unhappy people there too. You know, it's not the thing itself, it's you and what you bring to it. Yes?
Yes, I was going to ask about the role of humor in all of this,
Yes.
because I've noticed this.
Yes.
And then also, I think you sort of addressed it, but how do you disrupt yourself?
Yeah, well, that's hard, you know. I actually work with a lot of people that are sort of professional disruptors. That's the thing. I'm a very stable guy, I must say. I've had the same, I've been at Stanford over 50 years. I've been married to the same woman over 60 years. I don't have a very dynamic life, but I'm surrounded by these guys. They all want to train. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it's a disaster. You know, it's a destruction. But you'll never get. It's like the Embrace guys are a great example of that. They were so afraid to go for that solution because they had a solution. They had solved the problem they were given. And it was this courage. It takes the courage to do that. So, and if they failed, so what? It wouldn't have mattered either way. You know, it wouldn't have mattered either way.
No, I mean, the reason I ask is on sort of a serious thing, and maybe you've looked at this, but really sometimes people need to know how to experience courage. I did a project with Google,
Yeah.
you know, working with Google's
Yes.
kids and homeless organizations, and all of a sudden it's like these guys are saying, you're on this cliff, you know,
Well,
you just gotta jump.
but you give everything in your life its meaning, literally. It's a cliff, who cares, a cliff, I love to jump off a cliff. Wow, what a way to go. The Google cliff, woo, that's a big one. And Google does everything like 10 times bigger, so it's a 10 times higher cliff than normally.
Yeah.
So what? So you fail, what's gonna happen? We'll join her. And if you succeed, and it's the biggest success in the world, you're still going to join her.
The point is that you just gotta keep on moving.
It's how you handle it. It's the journey. It's really, I mean, it's cliche to say. It's really the journey. The end is nothing really. It gets boring. It really gets boring to people. That's why I almost never give a slide talk. I like to make up my talk, so I give the same class for 50 years, and it's always exciting because it's always a new class to me. I never heard that before. Did I say that? No. You know, it's that kind of thing. You have to arrange your life so you enjoy it every day. She has to enjoy going to work. This is going to help you. You go to work every day and you say to yourself, this is the rottenest, worst job anyone in the world could have. It is so bad, it is cool. This boy is so bad, it's great. Like, you know, this is the great, I'm sitting here, this is the worst lecture I've ever heard. It's so fantastic. The boss is the worst boss I ever had. Can you believe this boss? He is off the wall, he's so great. You've got to get to that state, really, really. Did you ever see the Dalai Lama? He chuckles about his whole nation is going up in smoke and he's chuckling. It sounds weird, but
Two quick questions. First one is on phrasing. I noticed that. Oh, sorry. Two quick questions. First one is on phrasing. I noticed that the way you phrased the question was, what would it do for you if you got this, rather than why do you want this?
Yeah.
And then later on you said, so what, which is a very unique way of phrasing things. And then the second question is, given the process that you talked about, can you give us examples where it did not work and why didn't it work?
Yeah. Well, it's a kind of funny point because people sometimes pick up on why, you know, that's egotistical. What will it do for you, for me, whatever. Believe me, on the bottom, it's all for you. You may be, you know, Mother Teresa, it was for Mother Teresa. Whatever she did, it was for Mother Teresa. It's not bad. It's okay. It's just how you do it and what your heart's about. But ultimately, if it's not serving you, you're not serving those people. You understand? So I don't have any problem with what it's doing for me. If you want to change it, fine. If it works, this is a pragmatic thing. If it works for you, do whatever works. I don't care. If it bothers you to say that, don't say it. It's going to get in the way of the exercise. But believe me, in my world, of course I'm doing it for Bernie. And I'm a good guy. I mean, ask anybody. Ask my wife, ask my kids, ask my colleagues. Bernie's a really good guy. And that's what I get off of. I get off on people thinking I'm a good guy. That's my life. And really, I got friends that are badasses. I grew up with some kids in the Bronx that are real badasses. And they think they're badasses. And they do everything so the whole world will think they're badasses. So we all have a self-image. And whatever our self-image is what drives what we do. That's the way we are. It's as simple as that. And if mine is a good self-image, so I'm a good guy. So I'm doing it because I'm a good guy. The world rewards that in a way. So I do more of it. You understand? There's nothing wrong with that. You can do it for something, and that's what it's about. It's who you think you are underneath. Believe me. If you don't believe me. I'll give you a reward.
The second question.
No.
Sorry, the second question was, given what you talked about, your process, can you give us examples when it did not work, or why?
When it doesn't work? You mean like this process? Well, when you lie to yourself, it doesn't work. It's like if you want to get married for sex and you end up with a dog, it's not usually that great. So you have to tell yourself the truth and all that. But let me tell you, it works all the time. But you have to. I do a workshop at Stanford every year, and I have a colleague they sit in the back. And this guy comes up to me every year after this, he says, Bernie, that process is amazing. Every year I'm there, and I do it, and I solve a problem. I go, well, it's not that complicated. By now you've done it for 20 years. Don't you think you could do it when I'm not around? You know, you don't need me to do it. So that's the problem. People don't do it. People don't do stuff themselves, and they kind of lie, and they kind of twist it. Believe me, it works. It works in my life. It works in everyone's life. And if it doesn't work, what have you lost? You know, it's not like, so then try it again some other time. But don't lie. Really, you know, I go through the whole thing in the book about that. But it's mainly people lie to themselves in that they don't tell themselves the truth because it may be against their self-image or something. So let's say I have something, and I have a good guy image, and I really I want to get married for money. good guys don't get married for money, right? So I'm not going to tell myself I want to get married for money, okay? Understand? So I'm never going to get what I really want. So I'll get married for some other reason. The person won't have money, and I'll be unhappy, okay? So if I can get past my image and tell myself really what I want, and you can try different things. It's not a one-to-one thing. In the quiet of your home, tell yourself different things and test them out. And in your belly, you'll know if companionship is the right answer. So in this room, companionship may be good, but at home, companionship may not be the right answer to why you want a spouse. Okay? And try it. And you'll if you have a bunch of things in your belly, you'll know what the right answer is. And if not, sue me. What can I say? Yes, sir.
Maybe a different sort of question here, but so I'm a designer, a UX designer,
Yes.
and I work in a world with a lot of data scientists and technologists. There seems to be a sort of a bit of a bias sometimes against sort of intuition, gut, art versus science. I mean, it ebbs and flows, but I wonder if you have any thoughts about the sort of making the case for checking gut checks and for intuition and for empathy and those sorts of things in a ostensibly kind of data-driven, sort of fact-based world.
Every profession I know of has a hierarchy and has prejudices and all that. That's part of life. So, and the only way to get around it is by giving people experiences and seeing it's not so. So, you know, whatever my image was of Mormons have changed since I'm teaching with this guy, as an example, because I didn't really know any Mormons before. So it's a kind of idea like that. So I think it's that kind of thing. So, but
like trusting the
well, you're not going to change. It's like history. You're not going to change Silicon Valley. You're not going to change the world. People will have prejudices. However, people who know you can say, you know, gee, he's a data guy and he's an artist too. I didn't know that was possible. I once had a funny story. We had this program called Product Design. I'll end with this. And it was a joint program between engineering, mechanical engineering, and the art department. And I had a student in my class who was going around, and he said, you know, I was at the University of Penn, and I wanted to study engineering, I wanted to study art, and they wouldn't let me do that. They said you have to choose one or the other. Here, I'm in a master's, and I can do both. It's amazing. So his mind was blown that the boundaries were different. So, you know, there are different boundaries within the society, different rules. And if you want to be a change agent, you have to pay your dues. Okay, so it's been really lovely being with you people. I'm sorry I destroyed your place and you'll never be.